Two Journeys Ministry with Pastor Andy Davis. Biblical teaching to guide you to spiritual maturity.
So we're looking for a second week at the short epistle, 3 John, and so I'd love for somebody to be able to read it for us, and we'll begin just going verse by verse. We looked at some big themes last time, but we want to go line by line today. So who would like to read 3 John for us?
The elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that in all respects you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. For I rejoice greatly when brothers came and bore witness to your truth. That is how you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than this, to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Beloved, you are acting faithfully in whatever work you do for the brothers, and are doing this, though they are strangers. And they bore witness to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. For they went out for the sake of the name, receiving nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support such men, so that we may follow workers with the truth. I wrote something to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first among them, does not welcome what we say. For this reason, if I come, I'll bring to remembrance his deeds which he does, unjustly disparaging us with wicked words. And not satisfied with this, he himself does not welcome the brothers either, and he forbids those who want to do so, and puts them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. The one who does good is of God. The one who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has received a good witness from everyone, and from the truth itself, and we add our witness, and you know that our witness is true. I had many things to write to you, but I'm not willing to write them to you with pen and ink. But I hope to see you shortly, and we'll speak face to face. Peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends by name.
Thank you so much. So just to set the context again, John is writing in a dominant word in this. Oh, yeah. Here you go. Does anyone else need a sheet? Yeah, all right. Good. See you. Hey, look at this. Jude, right here.
Should I go back?
No. I'm not giving them out today. I just needed a safety net in case we rip through 3 John and got done, had nothing to do. So I thought, all right, let's go on to Jude. So
Foretaste of what's to come in a few weeks.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So a dominant word is the word truth, or the truth. This is a big theme. We saw it obviously in 1 John and in 2 John. Now we have it again. In verse 4, I have no greater joy than hear my children are walking in the truth. In verse 3, faithfulness to the truth. You're walking in the truth. So faithfulness in the truth. So we talked about this so many. What does John mean by this? The truth. Faithfulness to the truth. You're walking in the truth. Look at verse 8. What does he say in verse 8 there?
Workers with the truth.
Workers with the truth. Interesting. My translation says work together for the truth, which I think is helpful. So the idea of working together for the truth, or workers in the truth. Anyway, so what is it? What is the truth?
Well, the gospel's the truth. He's concerned the gospel might not be spoken in truth.
Okay, so the gospel is the truth. I love that. Jesus obviously claims to be the truth. There's no real distinction in my mind. Jesus himself said in John 17, sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. So as Christians, we don't see any distinction really between the scripture and Jesus as the truth. They're equally true. And the scripture's primary role or job is to present Jesus Christ to us as Savior. That's the primary focus, and so the truth. But what does the word mean?
It means that what is in accordance into the will of God the Father to get the message proclaimed.
Yeah, and I think we can only answer it maybe to some degree by the opposite. What's the opposite?
False.
Falsehood.
False.
Lies. And so in a context, frankly, in a world, an entire world that's set up by a lie, which sounds like this: you will not surely die. Heard that one? Who said that? You will not surely die.
Satan.
Satan said that to Eve and through also to Adam because he was standing there. That's a lie. The sin entered the world through one man, Paul tells us, and death through sin. But that came through a lie. And Jesus said, "You're of your father the devil." He was a liar from the beginning, not holding to the truth because there is no truth in him. He's a killer. And he kills by lying. Isn't that what he did? He killed the human race by lying to us. And so in the context of an entire world set up on a lie, and it's not just the simple thing of "you will not surely die." The lie ultimately has to do with God, of God's nature, of God's will and purpose. He's lying primarily about God and our relationship to God. So then the truth is the opposite. Is what lines up with reality, what lines up with what is actually so about God and about us. And so, the image also that John gives us is light and darkness, right? God is light, and in him there's no darkness at all. We could see that in some sense in terms of truth and falsehood. Everything about God is true, and ultimately everything about Satan is a lie. Even the best parts of him, like he masquerades as an angel of light. However he looks attractive, it's a lie. So that's what I think the truth is. But like Lynn said beautifully, for our purposes, the truth is the gospel, or gospel doctrine. And to walk in the truth is to walk in the straight and narrow of the Word of God, the straight and narrow of the laws of God, the straight and narrow of the gospel of God. Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life. That narrow road is the truth. It's the gospel. And so that's what let's go then to my translation, not mine, but the NIV here, in verse 8. He says, "We ought therefore to show hospitality to such men, so that we may work together for the truth." We talked about this last time, but what is he talking about here? This hospitality piece and working together for the truth. Well, you have to go back. Someone read again. Damien, maybe you could read 5 through 8 just to get a running start here, 5 through 8.
Beloved, you are acting faithfully in whatever work you do for the brothers, and are doing this, though they are strangers, and they bore witness to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God, for they went out for the sake of the name, receiving nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support such men so we can be fellow workers with the truth.
Okay. So, Damien, who are these men that John's concerned about and he's writing about?
They're men that John has sent with the gospel.
Right, like missionaries, or they're just workers in the gospel. They're preachers, teachers, sent out by John. And what happened when they got to that locality, when they got there? What reception did they meet with?
Cold.
Yeah, and they're blocked. They're blocked by this man Diotrephes, who wants to be first, and he's like, "You're not getting in here. You're not coming here. We're not gonna give you a place to stay. We're not gonna give you food." And he does it with a bunch of slander and gossip and a bunch of bad things said about John, the whole thing. So that's the occasion of the epistle. Does that make sense? That's why he's writing. That's why. But before that, he wants to encourage this man Gaius. All right? And so that's where we're at. So the truth is the gospel of Jesus Christ and the word of God. Some messengers went out wanting to teach and to preach the truth. And so Paul's writing to Gaius, who seems to be like perhaps a member in that church or perhaps a leader in that church, but not at the level of Diotrephes. And he's writing to him. What does John think about Gaius?
Highly.
He thinks very highly of him. How do we know that? How do we know he thinks very, very highly of Gaius?
How he's described.
Okay, how is he described?
He loves them in truth.
He loves him in the truth.
Wants to see him face to face.
Wants to see him.
Acting faithfully.
Yeah, and he says he's praying for him, that his physical health may be good as his spiritual health is good.
He's walking in the truth.
He's walking in the truth.
So it brings him great joy that he is with faithfulness.
All right, so he's faithful to the truth and walking in the truth. So I think that the walking in the truth, let's take that first, speaks to his own heart and his own lifestyle. So what does that mean that he's walking in the truth?
His life reflects his belief.
Okay. Yeah, the gospel doctrine should affect the way you live. It's the only way I can know that anybody's a Christian. I can't know what's going on in your mind and your heart. but I can know your works. And Jesus said, by their fruit you'll know them. So only by your words, by your actions, by what you do, that's how I can know what you are. And that's what John calls walking in the truth. It's a daily lifestyle that lines up with the truth of the gospel. And this man Gaius is doing it. He's walking in the truth. And not only is he walking in the truth, he's faithful to the truth. We talked about that last time a little bit, but what does that mean? He's faithful to it.
Lives it out.
What's that?
Lives it out.
Lives it out. I think that's true. Yeah, go ahead.
He's always continuing to teach properly the gospel.
Yeah, I think it does go into his ministry. Walking in the truth is your daily lifestyle, but to be faithful to it, it implies, and I read this in 1 Corinthians, or second, I can't remember, I think 1 Corinthians says, it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. If something's been entrusted to you, you need to prove faithful. Gaius has been proved faithful. So some things have been entrusted to him. Maybe he's a leader, or maybe he's just a Christian, but the gospel was entrusted to him, and he's been faithful to it. He's done what the master wanted. And so he's faithful to the truth and he's walking in the truth. And then John makes a kind of a self-editorial comment, which is pretty famous in verse 4. Someone read it. It's a beautiful verse.
I have no greater joy than this, to hear that my children are walking in the truth.
Yeah, I mean, that's a well-known verse. We heard it this past Sunday. We hear it every Mother's Day, I think, because we have these babies that are dedicated, and then someone quotes 3 John 4. The greatest joy of Christian parents is to know that their children are walking in the truth. All right, so we know that Gaius is not John's biological son. But we have a regular pattern of Paul, for example, calling both Titus and Timothy his true son in the faith, right? So how do we understand this language of my children?
Well, it shows a particular and intentional fondness, love for them, care for them.
There's a relationship there. You children,
Okay.
you belong in that family, put it that way.
For sure.
John was a mentor to him at some point in time, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Paul says to the Corinthians, he says, even though you may have many trainers, or something, a different translation of the word, you only have one father in the gospel. For in the gospel, he became your father. What did Paul mean when he says he became the Corinthians' father in the gospel? He led them to Christ. He became their spiritual father by leading them to Christ. And so we have this sense of, to some degree, and I'm not getting weird because we have such a weird gender confusion going on in our culture today, but Jesus himself, to some degree, redefines the family, right? Remember when his mother and his brothers came to take charge of him because they said he was out of his mind? Remember that? Quite a low moment for Mary, all right? I have to believe she was just along for the ride as, James and Jude and the others were showing up to take charge of Jesus. It's an interesting moment, taking charge of the Son of God. It's like, hey, come with us. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get in, remember? Because there was such a huge crowd and someone had to bring a message to him. By the way, your mother and brothers are outside waiting for you. And he knew exactly why they were there. And he said, who is my mother? Who are my brothers? Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. And so that's, I wouldn't say redefinition because biological families matter. Biological fathers and mothers giving biological birth to children and then raising them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord is a beautiful thing. That's not what John's talking about here, though. He's talking about spiritual children. And what does it mean, the significance? I have no greater joy. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth.
I go back and I think to when we did the study in 1 John chapter 3, and it says that we have been lavished by the love of God. And then the next few words are, therefore we are children of God. So I go back and I think about that to, what we're doing now. And I mean, you have done according to God's will, that you have been lavished by him, that you are a child of God.
Just to be a child of God, we know it also goes back to John chapter 1. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him, but as many as did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of the flesh or the will of man, but born of God. And not of blood, he says there, meaning it's not a biological thing, it's not a genealogy, you're born of God, all right? But here, John is saying, to Gaius, you're my child in the faith. And not just him, but he says, gave me great, verse 3, gave me great joy to have some brothers come and tell about your faithfulness and how you continue to walk in the truth. So Gaius is one, others. John led many people to Christ, and so he's happy. And what's this language of no greater joy?
Seems to me it's almost the opposite of what Paul said in 2 Corinthians after he lists off all the sufferings that he's gone through. It's like, and on top of all that, I have this constant worry about how the churches that I've started are doing. And so in this case, it's like, if you have that worry, but then you get the word back that they're doing great, they're doing well, the joy is as extreme as the anxiety was.
Actually, and it's funny, in Paul's case, we have an exact example of that in 1 Thessalonians 3. Because what happened was he sent Timothy to find out if the Thessalonians were still Christians. And he had heard that they were being persecuted, and he was extremely worried about it, just like you quoted. But then Timothy came and said, all is well. Paul, they always remember you positively. They're still walking in the faith. It's the exact same dynamic here. And he says, now we really live. Now that you're standing firm in the faith.
Suffering is worth.
How can we thank God enough for all the joy you've given us? Because Timothy told us that you still like us. And it's not like he had some ego problem or he was a narcissist. Not at all. He knew that there was a link between how they thought about Paul and how they felt about Jesus, frankly. Because Paul was the one that preached Christ to them. And they're still in it. Despite the persecution, they're not stony ground hearers. They're still standing firm in the faith. And he's like, praise God. So
I think it, in a smaller scale, is somewhat the way we teach our children. And one of them is just sold out, and the other one is not so. And you ask yourself a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And then if your whole family is sold out to Christ, and you see the witness, you see the teaching going forward, then your joy is just bubbling over.
It's a great word. And I think last week I did link it to Luke 15, which is the parable of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son. And the point of all three parables is the reasonableness of Jesus seeking to save broken sinners, like tax collectors and sinners, being with them. He's being criticized for that. And he says, what's going on here is a big search effort is going on for the lost sheep or the lost coin or the prodigal son. And when we find any one of them and bring them in, there's joy in heaven. There's a big celebration. There's more joy over one sinner who repents than over 99 that don't need to repent. Well, I think the same joy is in verse 4 of this epistle. It's like I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in faith. There's a joy in salvation.
It all boils down to what's important in life, your physical destiny or your spiritual destiny.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there should be joy in the spread of the gospel, right? And we should not care, honestly, whether we were personally involved or not. We really shouldn't. I mean, we should care that we're being faithful to what we're entrusted to do. But if you hear that a friend of yours has led someone else to Christ, should you not rejoice just as much as if you were the one who did it? I think so. And in heaven you will. It won't matter to you who did it. It matters that it was done. And so there's a joy in this and all that. Would you say that the opposite it could be true as well? I have no greater grief than to hear that my children are not walking in the faith. You know, I think that can be one of the, I know as a pastor, it's one of the saddest things I've ever been through is godly parents of, at this present time at least, ungodly children. It's heartbreaking, and they have a hard time with it. And so it's sorrowful, yeah.
It seems like it's just, for the life of a Christian, it's just got to be over everything. Like so many prayer requests, you know, for loved ones, immediate family especially, and others that we care about, who we see are not walking, and there's no fruit, and we don't see any glimmer of hope as a human that, you know, they're going to end up in heaven. It's such a heavy burden. I think each one of us could relate to what John has written, you know, because we rejoice. I think I can identify with it, for I rejoice greatly when I have no greater joy. I can say, yes, that's what we've been praying for years. I've always been praying for brothers and sisters for 50 years.
And and I think it's just the weirdness, the strangeness of the life we live right now. It's a mixed experience we have. It's mixed. Paul talked about when he says sorrowful yet always rejoicing. There's going to be sorrows. I mean, he talks about it in Philippians too, with Epaphroditus, who was their messenger, the Philippians messenger who brought the money that they sent. But then he got sick, gravely ill, almost died. And Paul would have felt terrible if, because he brought the money to his prison, that he then caught an infectious disease and died. You have to write the Philippians, say, by the way, your messenger's dead. But there in Philippians 2, he says, but God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me, listen to this, sorrow upon sorrow. Now that's in the Epistle of Joy, where he says, rejoice in the Lord always. But by the way, I experience sorrow upon sorrow. So it's a mixed experience that we have in this world of both heartbreak and joyful things. In the next world, nothing but joy. Nothing but joy. There's no death, mourning, crying, or pain. That's all done. But right now, there's a lot of sad stories, aren't there? There's a lot of bad, sad experiences. So that's what we're going through. Now, let's zero in here on the missionaries, so to speak, or the ones sent out. And Damien already read it in verses 5 through 8. I'll read it again. Dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers, even though they are strangers to you. So you are doing the right thing. All right, what is it? Well, I would say welcoming them, feeding them, housing them, taking care of their needs, serving them in some ways. You are faithful, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. And then he says, you will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. Now we ought to, therefore, to show hospitality to such men so that we may work together for the truth. So, we may have already looked at it, but I want to look at it anyway. Go back to Matthew 10, and this is where the whole thing started. Matthew 10, while Jesus was training the 12, there came a point where, having designated them as apostles, he was going to send them out 2 by 2. And so there's only so much you can learn from the Word, from what I would call book learning. There's some things you have to go out and actually do. You have to learn by experience. And so he sends out the apostles 2 by 2 to actually go out and get some ministry experience, to go out and actually preach. But the words, the instructions he gives in Matthew 10 are bigger than that one moment. They soar above it. They're timeless words that cover missionary endeavor permanently going forward. So not just that first missionary trip, but this is what he says. He called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. That's apostolic authority. And then he lists them there, the names. And then he says, verse 5, these 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go out among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. He says to the Syrophoenician woman, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. So we're going to focus on the Jews at that point. And he says, go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, preach this message, the kingdom of heaven is near. Does that sound familiar? Yes, it's what John the Baptist preached. It's what Jesus preached when he started the same message. Kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Meaning what?
Don't charge.
Don't charge any money. Could they have charged for the healings? Would people have paid a denarius? A paralyzed man, a denarius, get up off his paralyzed bed. Oh, 10 denarii, more than that. Could they have become fabulously wealthy? I would say no, because the Father would shut down their apostolic power. It's like the first time they took a coin. It's done. All right, but, if not, yeah, they could have gotten rich. People will pay a huge amount of money to be healthy, but don't do it. Freely you have received, freely give. And then he says this, all right? Do not take along any gold or silver or copper in your belts. Take no bag for the journey or extra tunic or sandals or staff, for the worker's worth his keep. Now, he's saying, look, don't take a bunch of money, but Expect to be cared for. You know, don't worry about what you're gonna eat or where you're gonna stay. You're a worker, and Paul will make this clear in 1 Corinthians 9. Those who preach the gospel have the right to make their living from the gospel. So making a living is one thing, making a killing is another. So fundamentally, you know, he says, don't take anything. Travel light. All right, it's like, oh, travel light. Jesus said, that's what I'm doing. I have no place to lay my head. I have no big plans here. But just go out and see what God does. Now, when it comes to hospitality, though, he says, look, all right, whatever town or village you enter, search for some worthy person there and stay at his house until you leave. Don't go from house to house. He says that in Luke. Don't go from house to house. Don't find, let's say somebody puts you up, and then somebody a little wealthier in that same town says, hey, look, I got a villa overlooking the lake. Like, all right, sorry, friends, we're going over to, don't do that. What's that? Upgrade. Yeah, we're going first class now. It's like, don't do that. First person that takes you in, stay there until you leave that town. So you're not in it for all that, but somebody's gonna invite you in. All right, so stay there. And as you enter the home, give it your greeting. All right, may the Lord's peace be on this house. Something like that. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If not, let your peace return to you. All right, what does he mean by that? Well, he talks about it in the next verse. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet when you leave that home or town. I tell you the truth, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. So what is he saying? It's like not everybody's going to welcome you. As a matter of fact, they might initially welcome you, but then when they find out what your message is, they won't want any part of you. They might kick you right out into the street. And if that happens, in Luke's version, he says, go into the center of the town, take off your sandals and shake the dust off and walk out. And he says, pronounce judgment on it. In this case, he says, if the home is deserving, let your peace rest on the home. So your apostolic peace and blessedness will extend to that whole family. They're going to come under the umbrella of your blessedness. The blessing will come on that family. And he'll talk more about that at the end. All right, it's going to rest on that family. But if they reject you, let your peace return to you. Don't lack peace as you walk out. Don't get angry. Don't be upset. You haven't done anything wrong. They have. So walk out in peace. Don't let it trouble you, is what he's saying. Don't be disturbed by it, but definitely shake the dust off you and give them the warning because they're in trouble. It will be more bearable on the day of judgment for Sodom and Gomorrah than that town. Why? Let me ask you why. Why more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town?
Sodom and Gomorrah didn't hear the gospel in its fullness.
That's right. What did they get? They got Lot. What was Lot? Peter tells us he was a righteous man who was tormented in his righteous soul every day by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. That's all they got. Lot being tormented. This is the apostles of Jesus Christ preaching in his name salvation from hell and eternal welcome into heaven. It's a far greater revelation of truth. So the more you know, the more accountable you are on Judgment Day. Does that make sense? That's why it's more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. It's in proportion to knowledge. Anyway, let me skip all the other stuff where he's talking about all the persecutions and the councils and the Holy Spirit speaking through. And there's all this stuff. But he circles back to the welcome. All right. And he does that at the very, very end, verse 40 through 42. He who receives you, using the same language, receives me. And he who receives me receives the one who sent me. Anyone who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And anyone who receives a righteous man because he's a righteous man will receive a righteous man's reward. Well, they're apostles, right? By the same logic, anyone who receives an apostle and helps the apostle doing his apostolic ministry will get an apostle's reward. You realize how significant that is? The support ministries, the hospitality ministry, even the cup of cold water ministry will never lose its reward. So this is an open invitation to the world to show hospitality and support and food and clothing or whatever's needed for the messengers of the gospel. Isn't that amazing? And if so, you get the same reward that they do. That's awesome, isn't it? So that's the backdrop of, go back now to 3 John, and he says, dear friend, you are faithful in what you're doing for the brothers, even though they are strangers to you. So he's writing to someone who is showing hospitality to the messengers of the gospel, all right? Even though they're strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. You'll do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. What does that mean? You'll do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God.
Spread the gospel.
Okay, so the messengers come to your house, and there'll come a time that they're done being at your house, right? You're like, well, thank God for that. Kidding. At some point, they're going to leave. And when they leave, send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. What does that mean?
Maybe with some provision.
Give them some food for their journey.
For sure.
Definitely encouragement. Maybe some financial support. Pray for them. Hug them, love them. Let them feel good about the time they had with you. They're going off happy because they were with you. Do that. Send them on their way well. Does that make sense? Does that matter? How you send somebody, that it ends well? I hope you realize you stayed about a week longer than I thought you were going to stay. And I thought this was going to cost about 6 denarii. It cost us about 18. But hey, don't worry about it. Okay? Don't do that. All right? Send them on their way peaceful, joyful, glad they spent their time.
Give thanks to the Lord for their time that they were there.
Yeah. All right. So he says, do that. Now, what is this concept of working together for the gospel? It comes to that whole universal church, local church thing. What does that mean, this idea of we all need to work together for the gospel?
Well, there are different positions of people and different ways to spread the gospel. And,
Right.
and the ones who are older, we're not so likely to be able to go out on a mission field for an extended length of time, like a younger man or woman. But we can do other things. We can support them financially. We can pray. We can send encouragement of other kinds, perhaps.
For sure. I mean, perhaps you've all had the experience of someone who came to you raising support for some mission trip, right? And then there's the big problem of what the missiologists called the UUPGs, which is the unreached, unengaged people groups. So these are people in distant lands that no one's even strategizing to reach. No one's engaged them at all. They are the work that's left to be done when Jesus said this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, ethne. All the nations are going to hear. When that's done, the end will come. Now, you just said, Jim, we're not all gifted or going to be able to go to some of these UUPGs. Where do you think they are, the UUPGs? Are they in Cary? They're not in Cary, I can tell you right now, all right? They're probably in the Horn of Africa, Somalia, right? The northern African, the Muslim regions. They're in Indonesia. They're in Central Asia and China and all that.
Yeah. I thought about that since you mentioned Cary. There is an entity in Cary. And in this day and age, they can reach far people groups, Trans World Radio, headquartered in Cary. A lot of people don't even know that. And I know something about that ministry.
But you're not saying they themselves are an unreached people group.
No, they're the ones who reach them.
I know.
The radio waves.
I said there weren't any UPGs
in
Cary.
In faraway, strange places, so they don't.
Yeah, I'm aware of them. We're very aware of their work and have been connected with them for a while. It's amazing. It really is. I guess the point is that there is an obligation to either be sending or going. Does that make sense? What do I mean by that? That we're under obligation when it comes to unreached people groups to either be senders or goers.
We're never exempt from the Great Commission, no matter what our state is.
So how do we be senders?
A spectator sport.
Okay, so how do we, if we're not going to go, how do we be senders then?
Support those who will go.
The finances.
With the resources that the Lord has given us.
Is it just money though?
Is that it? No, it's from local church to local church, as they're going, can support with like you said, food, clothes, whatever makes them comfortable. Even sometimes maybe wheels for a limited period of time. That happens right here in this church.
Yeah, and if I can take you, brother, as an example, you and I have both been, and others have been in contact with the Housans, right? And it's not money, generally, at this point. It's moral support, encouragement when they go through hard times. Say we're praying for you. I mean, we're able to do that in ways that missionaries in the 19th century could never do. It's more real time now than ever before. We're able to find out somebody's got an issue going on today. They're being called in front of some magistrate or some person. They have to answer something. Please pray for me because I have to go in 2 hours. You can, I mean, that could never have happened in Adoniram Judson's day. So we're able to support not just financially, but to care, be aware, pray. We can do that. So anyway, that's what I think it means here, to work together for the gospel. We're all in this together. And that's what he's saying. He said, now, it was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. What does that mean? So these missionaries went out and they didn't get any help from the pagans.
That'd be they're being opposed because they're worshiping false gods and not interested.
I'm sorry, Herb.
They're using you for their advantage.
Yeah, and if the pagans find out what you're about, are they going to be welcoming you into their home and all that? They're not. And he's actually saying they're not supporting them.
Yeah. My translation says accepting nothing, as though they were maybe offered something but then turned it down.
That might be possible. Yeah, I mean, we're not, we don't want any, it's kind of like when Abraham fought that battle with the battle of the kings in Genesis 14. He didn't want any of the loot. So I'm not taking any of that. I don't want the king of Sodom saying he made me rich. That's before Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. So that's a good example. That may well be. At any rate, look, they're not accepting any help, or they're not getting any help from the pagans. They need help from the church. We ought, therefore, to show hospitality to such men so that we may work together for the truth. All right. In my Bible, I have to turn the page, and it's really kind of significant that you turn the page. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Diotrephes. Now we get to the next phase of this letter. Look, I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will have nothing to do with us. If I come, I will call attention to what he is doing, gossiping maliciously about us. Not satisfied with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. He also stops those who want to do so and puts them out of the church. So to keep a cohesive theme here, what's going on with this guy? We've been talking about, we sent out messengers, welcome, we need to work together for truth. Now I want to tell you something about this man Diotrephes. What's going on with this guy?
So in other words, we're switching from commendation to condemnation.
For sure. All right. So what is he doing that's worthy of condemnation?
Sounds somebody that wants to be in control.
He's not welcoming.
That just wants to control everything.
I think you're right. He wants to be in control. The text says he loves to be first, wants to be first. What is he doing, though, practically when it comes to these missionaries?
He may have access to funds that he cuts off. He may have just a lot of followers that will join him in cutting off any advancement of the gospel unless he sees it his way.
So
the church owner.
Yeah, he's the owner of the church. He refuses to welcome the brothers, so no hospitality. So I think that's comprehensive. So you're not going to get a place to stay. You're not going to get a hot meal. You're not going to get anything. You're not going to get any money. That's not happening. But that's not all he does. What else does he do?
He must have nothing to do.
He blasphemes or lies or gossips maliciously about who? John says us. Meaning, when John says us, he usually means us apostles or us leaders. But he means himself. He's lying about me and about our work here. Gossiping maliciously. Like, what kinds of things do you think Diotrephes was saying about John?
What they're teaching is false.
False teacher?
They're the opposite. They are the false teacher.
Yeah, I mean, he's claiming that John's not a good man. He's not, we're not taking anybody from John. And so gossiping maliciously against us. So he won't welcome them. He's saying really bad things about me and about the men we sent out. But that's not all he does. What else does he do?
He stops them from doing what they need to do.
Refuses to welcome the brother.
Well, we already got that.
Stops the ones that want to help.
The people who want to help. It's like, well, Diotrephes, you're not helping, but I'm going to have them. I will help.
Influence over.
And he says, if you do that, you're out of the church. See that? So he's got power, like Lynn was saying, to basically excommunicate anybody who welcomes John's messengers in. Now, that's amazing. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this is 2 John writes saying, the false teachers are going out, you ought not welcome them in or help them in their work. Because if you do, you'll be sharing in their wicked work. I mean, go back and look at it. 2 John, all right? Verse 10 and 11. 2 John 10 and 11. Someone read that.
If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your own, and do not greet him, for the one who greets him shares in his evil work.
So don't help them. Well, who is it that they're not supposed to help? False teachers. False teachers. So basically it all comes down to getting it right. If the teachers come in the name of the Lord teaching the right doctrine, you need to help them. Mm-hmm. If they come not in the name of the Lord, but in the spirit of Antichrist, and they're not bringing the right doctrine, you cannot help them. You got to get it right. So going back to Diotrephes, did he get it right?
No.
No, he didn't. These were actual workers for the gospel, and if you do not help them, it's a judgment that's coming on you. And so Diotrephes is blocking true messengers of the true gospel and threatening to excommunicate people who help them. And that's what's going on with this guy. Now, Jack mentioned that this guy seems to have an ego problem. How do we see that? How do we see an ego problem in Diotrephes?
First place, it mentions in verse 9.
Go ahead and read it.
I wrote something to the church, Diotrephes, who loves to have first place among them, does not receive our authority.
So, Ralph, tell me more about that, loving to have first place.
It's that evil deacon syndrome. Yes. I could tell stories.
I'm just curious. I don't want to digress here, but I would love to know the origin of the whole demon deacon thing. I'd love to find out where that whole thing started. Is that like a Southern Baptist thing or whatever? That must have been going on a long time.
I don't know. It's been going on as long as I've been around. So.
Yeah, but at any rate, we do know this. Pride is a tremendous enemy of the gospel.
Yeah, so ego.
That ego, that pride, that narcissism, that leadership. And this is the whole thing. Jesus talked to his disciples about this. He's very, very clear about this. He says, you know that the Gentiles lord it over them and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Don't be like that. You remember that whole thing came about because James and John got their mother to go ask Jesus for a privilege. You remember what it was?
No.
Grant that one of these sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. And then it says, when the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. It's just a low moment for the apostles, right? And then Jesus has to teach them about leadership. He said, look, that's not how we're doing it here. Whoever wants to be first, great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And that's why it's so repugnant what you see happened with the papacy, for example, when in Middle Ages and beyond, they became lords on earth with tremendous political power and overwhelming wealth. And when you came in their presence, you had to kneel and kiss their ring and all that. Where did all that come from? This is exactly what Jesus was talking about. Don't do that. Don't lord it over people. You should be everyone's servant. The greatest among you will be servant. But here's this man Diotrephes, and he's got this ego. He's got this whole thing. And this is a consistent problem, very big problem. The sermon I wrote this week, about 5 weeks out, so it's going to be a while before I preach it, but it was the conflict between Paul and Barnabas over John Mark at the end of Acts 15. Remember that story? I mean, it's ugly. All right, here are these two great men. And I can picture it this way. Barnabas, Paul says, hey, let's go on this missionary journey. Let's go back. And Barnabas says, hey, great idea. By the way, I just want to talk to you about something. John Mark, remember him? Of course I remember him. Anyway, he wants in. He wants to come back. He's like, well, he abandoned us. He ditched us through sheer cowardice. No, we're not taking him. I know, said Barnabas. But he's different now. He's learned his lesson. He needs a second chance. Well, I'm not giving him a second chance. All right? Now, I don't know how it went from there. But the Greek is paroxysm. They had a vigorous argument. Do you have a sense that there was probably some pride involved in that whole thing?
A little bit.
I think definitely so. The sinfulness was the pride, all right? And I think once the two of them locked horns, I could imagine, I'm not saying this happened, but I think I could imagine. It's like, wait a minute, Paul. I remember a day when you came to the church at Jerusalem and no one wanted to talk to you because of what you'd done earlier, dragging off men and women and putting them in prison. We all remember what happened. And you couldn't get hospitality, you couldn't get a meal, you couldn't get anything because we all thought you'd be a traitor. And they were afraid of you. But guess what happened? I know you remember what happened. I put an arm around you. Don't you ever forget that. I welcomed you in. I spoke for you. You owe me. Maybe. Did that happen? I don't know. All I know is there's definite aroma of sin between these two men with the word paroxysm. I don't think it was wrong that they split up. I think, imagine they said, look, I've got a good idea. I think, Barnabas could say, I think John Mark has a bright future. I think he's going to write one of the 4 Gospels. I doubt he said that. Anyway, I think he has a bright future. What do you say? I take him to Cyprus, my home area, and I school him, train him, get him to a high level of maturity. Why don't you choose someone else? Maybe somebody like Silas. And Paul says, or vice versa. I don't care who suggests it. It's like, good idea. Pray together. They hug. They go 2 different directions. There's no sin. It's strategy. Nothing wrong with that, right? But the paroxysm between the two, that's got to be pride. It's pride. How much of a problem do you think this is in local churches around the world? Ego, pride, people who want to be first. It's a problem.
For Peter, it was, even if all these guys fall away, I won't.
I'm number 1.
But I think that those moments, it's interesting as to whether you respond better to positive encouragement or negative encouragement.
Yeah.
I think most of us would say we respond better to positive, but I think if the truth were known, it's the negative encouragement. I bet you Mark wouldn't have abandoned Barnabas on that missionary journey if for no other reason than to give Paul the satisfaction of winning that argument. But I bet it refined him and made him more the man that God wanted him to be.
I think both were needed.
Yeah.
I think Paul's sternness and him upholding, remember what Jesus said, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of heaven. That's a valid point. If John Mark flakes out a second time when they have some persecution, like they're going to face in Philippi, remember with the Philippian jail and all that? Imagine John Mark in the Philippian jail begging, pounding, let me out, I'm not with these guys. That would have been devastating. Paul's right about that. But is Barnabas right that sinners should get a second chance and could get a second chance and that God can restore somebody and use them? Ever heard of Peter? Peter was restored. And so therefore, both of them are right. The problem.
We're all in trouble.
Yeah, God uses sinners. So they're both right. But they were both wrong, too, in the sinful pride, I think, that was at the root of it. So I think we need to say, look, I guarantee in every church, in every man, there is a destructive ego and pride. We all have it. And the warning here is it's not just Diotrephes is a bad man. It's like, what of that is in me? What in me loves to be first or wants to be preeminent? Just kill it. Because it's just not good for the church. That's what the warning I get out of this Diotrephes here. Yeah.
Well, Paul later acknowledged, I think, his sin with John Mark. As he endorsed him.
I don't know that he acknowledged sin. He definitely accepted John Mark. So I think, here's the thing. I think the only sin I see Paul commit, in my opinion, after his conversion is there at the end of Acts 15. The other, it's just a matter of judgment. Again, imagine the two of them gladly, strategically prayed to split up and let me work with John Mark and develop him. And then later Paul welcomes him and says he's useful to me in my ministry, which he did say in Colossians. There's no sin involved there. It's just John Mark's ready. He's developed. But there's sin, I think, in the paroxysm. There's sin in the anger, all of that. At any rate, I just want to say Diotrephes is a bad guy, definitely. And what he's doing is wrong. But the root cause, we need to be able to see that in ourselves and say, I don't want to be like that. It's a warning to all of us. Let's keep going because I think it'd be good to do Jude next week. So let's finish. Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God. So what he's saying is, look, don't be like Diotrephes. That's probably the word to us too. Don't imitate that. Don't act like that. Don't want to be first and do the wrong thing. I think that's what I get out of don't imitate. We got to do what's right. And John is all about doing what's right. At 1 John, he's like, hey, look, comes down to your works. He who does what is right is righteous.
Be the person that the Lord created you to be.
And yeah, do the right thing and don't imitate evil people. And now we go on to the third individual in this letter, Demetrius. Who's that? Well, we don't know anything about him, just this. Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone and even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him, and you know that our testimony is true. So what do you get out of that? Who's this guy, Demetrius? We don't know anything about him, but what does he say about him?
He's a believer. He's a faithful believer.
He's got a good reputation, consistent. Everyone here speaks well of him. It makes more sense if Demetrius is the actual bearer of 3 John, of the letter to Gaius. Like he's the one actually carrying the letter. He says, by the way, the letter bearer, Demetrius, everybody here loves him. He's a good man. So it's like a commendation. It's like his resume. By the way, what does John say if he ever goes to Diotrephes' church? What does he say he's going to do?
Call to remembrance.
He's going to call him out. He's going to call Diotrephes out. What do you think about that, Damien?
I think accountability is one of the Lord's strongest tools for correction and redemption. And if he's not redeemable, if the Lord doesn't see him as his child, then he'll face a greater judgment.
Yeah. And you remember when Paul says to the Corinthians, what do you prefer? Shall I come with a whip or in gentleness? That's an amazing statement. It's like, all right, you want me to beat you or speak kindly to you? And what would beating look like? Well, he's an apostle. You guys remember the story of Ananias and Sapphira? What happened to them? Dropped dead.
They made a great big contribution to the church and got killed for it.
I would say I would shape it a little differently. Like no good deed goes unpunished. It's a clear example of no good deed goes unpunished.
MSNBC.
A little bit of a spin on it there, Chris. Thank you. I was thinking it was the lying, but what do I know? But yeah, they lied.
There was the lie.
But here's the thing. It's pretty clear, just like with Mount Sinai, it says not a hand will be laid on him. Did anyone lay a hand on Ananias and then on Sapphira? Did anyone touch him?
Just drag him out.
We were dropped dead.
That's an apostolic whip right there. Right? I mean, that's the kind of power there is in an apostle. You know? He has that kind of power. It's scary and it's powerful. But he says, look, I don't want to do that, Corinthians. I want to come with gentleness, so get your act together. You know, do the right things. He's urging them. With John there, I think it's like, if I come and he's still doing this, I'm going to call him out. I'm going to deal with him. And again, we get with Demetrius, we get the idea of a reputation. So all of its reputation. Diotrephes is gossiping maliciously about us, slandering our reputation. So I got to tell the truth about him to protect our own reputation. And by the way, Demetrius has a good reputation among all of us. So reputation really does matter. It's Titus 1 and 1 Timothy 3, the first requirement of elders that they be blameless. The word blameless does not mean sinless and perfect. It means you have a good reputation. No one could say anything against you serving as an elder. Does that make sense? I think that's what it means. No one's going to come forward and say, no, they should not be an elder. I think that's what blameless means.
Demetrius is a person who was part of a group of missionaries who is receiving a great commendation from John to Gaius about what he is aiming to do.
Yeah, I don't know that much about Demetrius. I'm guessing that he is the one that bore the letter 3rd John to Gaius, but I don't know that. Beyond that, we just don't know anything about him other than what he says here. Now, to finish up, I have much to write to you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. It's amazing how John says this kind of thing. He says it at the end of his own gospel where he says, look, I could write more, but the whole world wouldn't be able to hold the books that would be written. And here he says, look, I really want to be with you face to face. So I just had a conversation with someone, I won't say who, it's not a bad thing, but he was talking about how people of my generation, he said of himself, we're much more comfortable with virtual meetings like Zoom, all that. People of your generation, meaning baby boomer, which I am, I'm at the very end of the baby boomer thing. So I was getting kind of talked to about that. You like to do the whole face-to-face thing. I was like, I should have thought of this verse. It's like, look, it says it right here. It's much better to be face-to-face, don't you think? Would you guys be okay if you found out when you died that you're put in some room and all of heaven was virtual? Would you be okay with that? I'm looking forward to face-to-face, amen? And so he says, look, I have more to write to you, but let's be honest, face-to-face is going to be much better. And I think, I mentioned this to you, I think 2 weeks ago or last week. It's really cool. Imagine Jesus saying that to us. It's like, you got the Bible and this is enough, but I have a lot more to say to you than this. I prefer to do it face-to-face. That's what Paul says effectively in 1 Corinthians 13. Now we see through a glass darkly, through the Bible. Then we will what? We'll see face-to-face. And we'll hear a lot more from his own lips. As it says in the scripture, they will all be taught by God. How awesome is that going to be? We have a lot to learn, don't we? Alan, would you close in prayer?
Gracious Father in heaven, we thank you for this time that you have blessed us with and that we can meet together, fellow believers, face to face, and grow closer to you through your word, your truth. And all this, we thank you in your Son's precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Stay motivated to grow to spiritual maturity by accessing free biblical content at twojourneys.org. Help others in their spiritual growth by sharing these resources, praying for Two Journeys, and supporting the mission financially by visiting twojourneys.org/donate.